Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel, MR.Creepy. So today's video is definitely going to creep you out. In this video, we're getting into 4 real accounts from people who encountered something deeply wrong on the highway, and not one of them walked away unchanged. Before we begin, let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is for you right now. If you enjoy this kind of content, make sure to like the video and subscribe. Alright, let's get into tonight's stories. I was 26 when this happened, and I want to start there because I think who I was at that age matters to the story. I was the kind of person who believed in stopping. If something looked wrong on the road, you pulled over. You checked. That's just what decent people did. I'm not that person anymore. Not entirely. And the night I lost that version of myself happened on Route 9 in upstate New York, close to 1 in the morning, on a drive I'd made 100 times before. I was coming back from my cousin's wedding reception. My suit jacket was folded over the passenger seat. I had a half-empty water bottle in the cup holder and a long, familiar road ahead of me. The kind of night where the drive feels automatic. Hands on the wheel, eyes on the line, mind somewhere else entirely. 30 minutes in, I saw her. A woman on the right shoulder, both arms raised above her head, waving, not lazily, not the casual thumb out of a hitchhiker. Full, urgent arm movements, the kind that say something is seriously wrong. She looked to be in her mid-40s, pale blue cardigan, dark pants, no luggage visible beside her, no car behind her, no hazard lights blinking anywhere nearby, just her standing alone in the dark at the edge of my headlights. I slowed down. I moved right. I put my hazard lights on, and then I saw something that made me stop before I ever opened the door. She wasn't looking at me. She was waving with her whole body, arms going, posture urgent, but her face was turned to the left, toward the tree line on the other side of the road. She was watching something in those trees, while her arms flagged down traffic. The two things were completely disconnected. The waving was for the road. The watching was for the woods. And whatever she was watching, she hadn't looked away from it once since I'd slowed down. I turned off my hazards. I pulled back onto the road. I kept driving. For the next 10 minutes, I argued with myself constantly. She needed help. She was stranded. I'd driven past a woman alone on a dark highway because of a feeling I couldn't even name. I'd almost fully talked myself into turning around when my phone rang through the car speakers. My cousin, calling to make sure I'd gotten home safe. I told him I was still driving. He told me about a funny moment from the reception I'd missed. I laughed at the right places. The conversation was easy and normal, and it pulled me back into the ordinary world for a few minutes. I was still on the phone with him when my headlights swept across something on the right shoulder, a pale blue cardigan, folded neatly on the ground at the very edge of the asphalt. Centered, deliberate, like someone had taken the time to fold it before setting it down. No one near it, nothing else around it. Just the cardigan sitting there in my headlight beam for the 3 seconds it took me to pass it. I was 15 miles from where I'd seen the woman. I had been driving at 60 miles an hour. There was no exit, no turnoff, no parallel road between that point and this one. The geometry of it simply does not work, and I have spent years trying to make it work, and I cannot. I didn't tell my cousin what I'd just seen. I said goodnight and hung up and drove the remaining hour home in complete silence, both hands on the wheel, eyes forward, not letting myself look too long at any shadow on any shoulder. When I got home, I sat in my parked car in the driveway for a while before going inside. I didn't know what I was waiting for. I think I just needed a few minutes before I had to act normal in front of anyone. Here is what I've settled on, not comfortably, but honestly, I don't know what I saw. I don't know if that woman needed help, or if stopping would have cost me something. I was never going to get back. I made a decision based on a feeling I couldn't explain, and I will never know with certainty whether it was cowardice or instinct, or something that functioned as survival without me understanding it. What I do know is that the cardigan was folded, not dropped, not discarded, folded the way you'd fold something you intended to leave behind. That detail has never stopped bothering me, and I don't think it ever will. I take a different road home from my cousin's house now. I have since that night. He's never asked me why. and I've never explained it. Some things are easier to quietly root around than to explain. That stretch of Route 9 is one of them. It has been for 5 years, and, as far as I'm concerned, it always will be. I want to be clear about something before I start. I'm not someone who scares easily. I drove night routes alone through rural Nevada for nearly 3 years. I've been on roads so empty that the only proof the world still existed was the stars overhead and the hum of my own engine. I liked that feeling once, the solitude of it, the way the darkness felt like privacy rather than threat. I don't feel that way about empty roads anymore, and the night that changed it wasn't dramatic, at least not at first. It didn't start with screaming or chasing or anything that would make sense as a horror story if you told it quickly. It started with a parked car and 2 open doors, and the wrongness crept in so slowly that by the time I understood what I was looking at, I was already too far inside it to back out cleanly. This was a pharmaceutical supply run, eastbound on Route 375, out of a depot near Las Vegas. I'd done that exact route 60-something times, left at 9, back by 4 in the morning, nothing in between but dark highway and the occasional coyote crossing the beam of my headlights. That night, I left on time, manifest signed, van loaded, coffee in the cuff holder. An hour in, everything's still routine. Mile 47 is where it started. There was a sedan on the shoulder, dark-colored, older model, positioned normally, pulled all the way over, not blocking traffic. What wasn't normal were the doors. Both front doors were open wide, pushed back to their full extension, like 2 arms stretched out, hazard lights blinking. No one inside, no one standing nearby, no luggage on the ground, no visible reason for the stop. I slowed as I passed and looked carefully. The interior light was on. The seats were empty. The road behind and ahead of the car was dark and still. I noted the mile marker, noted the time, 10:47, and kept driving. Protocol said, don't stop. I'd never questioned that protocol until that night, and I'm glad I didn't. 3 miles further down the road, a man walked out of the dark left shoulder directly into my lane. Not running, not stumbling, not waving his arms, walking, calm and deliberate, directly into the center of my lane, like he'd been waiting just past the edge of my headlight range for a vehicle to appear. I hit the brakes hard. The van shuddered. I stopped maybe 25 feet from him, close enough to see him clearly in the full wash of my lights. He was heavyset, wearing a dark jacket and a gray shirt underneath, no coat, despite the cold. And it was genuinely cold that night, 42 degrees when I'd left the depot. He was holding something at his side, low, slightly behind his leg, where the ankle made it hard to see clearly. He wasn't looking at my windshield. He was looking at the front of the van, almost through it, like he was thinking about something, and I was incidental to that thought. Then he looked up and directly at me. I want to describe his expression because I think it matters. It wasn't threatening. It wasn't frightened. It wasn't the face of someone who needed help or someone who intended harm in an obvious way. It was patient, settled, like he had all the time available to him, and had already decided how this was going to go, and he was simply waiting for me to catch up to his version of events. He took 2 slow steps toward the van, then he stopped. He turned his head back down the road toward mile marker 47, held it there for a moment, then turned back to face me. His mouth moved. I couldn't hear him through the glass. He said it again, slower, separating the words like he thought that would help me understand. I put the van in reverse. He started walking toward me. No change in pace, no reaction to the reversing van, no urgency whatsoever. Just that same steady walk, arms at his sides, whatever he'd been holding apparently gone now. He came forward in my headlights like he was on a track, and I was the thing at the end of it. I reversed for 200 feet, found enough road width to swing around, shifted into drive, and left. I pushed the van hard back toward mile marker 47. Both doors of the sedan were closed. Hazard still running, interior light still on, same car, same spot on the shoulder, but both doors were fully shut. in the time it had taken me to reverse, execute a 3-point turn on a narrow road, and drive 3 miles back, someone had closed both of those doors, quietly, in the dark, on a road with no cover and no structures nearby. I did not stop. I kept my speed, and I watched that car in my mirror until the road curved and it disappeared. There had been a second person out there the entire time. Someone I never saw, someone who'd been positioned somewhere in that darkness while the man in the road held my headlights and my attention. 2 of them working that stretch of highway, and I had driven right between them and not known it until the doors gave them away. I pulled into a lit gas station 40 minutes later and sat in the van until I stopped shaking. I called dispatch and gave them the mile marker and description. They sent someone out. The sedan was gone before anyone arrived. No report matched it in the system. No plates traced. Nothing followed up with me directly. I gave my notice 2 weeks later. My supervisor said he understood, that the night routes wore people down eventually. I let him think that was it. The man's expression is what I still think about most. Not the fear of the moment, but that patience in his face. Like nothing I did was going to surprise him. Like he'd seen every version of this interaction before and had a plan for each one. Whatever I had walked into on that stretch of road, it wasn't improvised. The open doors, the man in the lane, the second person somewhere in the dark, that was a system, practiced and quiet, and set up long before my headlights ever reached it. I think about the 60 times I drove that road before without seeing anything wrong. I think about what was happening on the miles I wasn't on. I think about other drivers who took that route on other nights, and whether any of them had a reason to call dispatch, and whether anyone lobbed those calls or let them disappear the same way mine did. I drive in daylight now, on busy roads, with my doors locked from the moment I get in. It's a small adjustment that costs me almost nothing. I made it because some lessons don't need to happen twice to last a lifetime. I've replayed this night so many times that the details have worn grooves into my memory. I can close my eyes right now and feel the exact texture of that steering wheel under my hands. Hear the exact sound the road made when the asphalt gave way to something older and rougher. See the exact moment my headlights landed on something that had no business being there. The thing is, none of it would have happened if I hadn't made one small, stupid, completely ordinary decision. The kind of decision you make 100 times in your life without consequence. That night, it had consequences. I am still living with. My brother Daniel was 19. I was 25. We'd driven down to see our father for his birthday weekend. A 6-hour round trip we'd done together since Daniel got old enough to keep me company on long drives. He was good company, easy to be around, never complained, always brought snacks and a playlist, and fell asleep somewhere around hour 2 with his head against the window. That drive was one of the things we did together that felt like ours. I didn't understand how much it meant to me until that night almost took it away permanently. We left our father's house on a Sunday evening, aiming to be home before midnight. The first 4 hours were exactly what they always were. Daniel asleep by hour 2, his breath fogging the passenger window slightly, my playlist cycling through quietly, the highway dark and steady and familiar ahead of us. Then the GPS showed a problem. A highway closure about 40 miles out. A jackknifed truck had blocked 3 lanes and traffic was backed up for miles. The estimated delay was over an hour. The GPS offered an alternate route, a state road cutting through farmland that would add only 12 minutes to our trip instead of 60. I looked at the route preview. It seemed straightforward. I took it without waking Daniel, because why would I wake him? It was just a detour. The transition was subtle at first. 4-lane highway narrowing to 2 lanes. Then the road surface changing beneath the tires. That slight roughness that tells you the road doesn't get much maintenance. The GPS showed us moving through flat agricultural land, the kind of terrain that looks the same for miles in every direction. No houses with lights on, no businesses, nothing but dark fields and the occasional shape of a grain silo against the sky. Daniel stirred when the road changed texture. Where are we? His voice was thick with sleep. Detour. Highway was closed. Go back to sleep. He looked out the window for a moment at the darkness, then settled back against it. How far out are we? Maybe 40 minutes. He nodded and closed his eyes. I should have turned around right then. I know that now. The road felt wrong in a way I wasn't letting myself acknowledge. Too narrow, too dark, too far from anything. But it was just a back road, and we were almost through it, and turning around would have meant the long delay and waking Daniel fully and explaining the detour. And none of that felt worth it, for a feeling I couldn't name. I found a name for it about 6 miles in, when my headlights swept around a long curve and landed on a vehicle parked sideways across both lanes. It was a pickup truck, old, dark-colored, no lights running, parked at a diagonal angle that blocked the road completely, not carelessly, not like someone had stopped in a hurry, angled with precision, like someone had taken the time to position it so that no vehicle could pass on either side. There was a shallow ditch running along both edges of the road. No way around. I stopped. I sat there with the engine running, both hands on the wheel, and I looked at that truck for a long moment. Daniel was awake now, fully, sitting up straight. Why are we stopped? There's a truck blocking the road. He leaned forward and stared through the windshield. The truck sat maybe 60 feet ahead of us, dark and still. No movement near it. No one visible inside or outside. Is it broken down? I don't know. I want to tell you I made the right call. I want to tell you that I looked at that truck, felt the wrongness of it in my bones, and immediately put the car in reverse and got us out of there. But that's not what happened. What happened is that I sat there for almost a full minute, and then I told Daniel to lock the doors and stay in the car, and I got out. I've asked myself why more times than I can count. The most honest answer I have is that I still believed, in that moment, that there was a normal explanation, that a farmer had broken down, or someone had pulled over sick, or there was some mundane reason for a truck to be sitting sideways across a back road at 11 at night, and I just couldn't see it yet from inside the car. I walked toward it with my phone flashlight on. The gravel crunched under every step, with a sound that felt far too loud in the silence around me. I swept the beam across the cab as I approached. Empty. I tried the door, unlocked, which felt wrong immediately, like something staged rather than something abandoned. The interior smelled like old upholstery and something faintly chemical underneath it that I didn't recognize. The truck bed held one item, a single yellow rope coiled carefully near the tailgate. Not thrown in, coiled. The kind of careful arrangement that means someone was thinking clearly when they put it there. I heard Daniel hit the horn, 2 short honks, one after another. I turned around fast. There was a man standing between me and my car. He had not made a single sound crossing that gravel. He was simply there, positioned in the gap between my open car door and the front of the vehicle, large and still and watching. Not me. Watching the passenger window. Watching Daniel. Everything in me went cold and quiet at once. I walked toward my car, not ran. I made myself walk because some part of me understood that running would change what this was, would confirm something for him, would shift the nature of the moment in a way I couldn't take back. I kept my eyes on his face, and I walked toward my car with every step feeling like it lasted a full minute. He watched me come. When I was about 15 feet from him, he moved. One single step to his right, just enough to give me a path to the driver's door. He didn't step back. He didn't leave. He simply adjusted, like a man making a small, practical calculation. I got in the car. Daniel had the lockup. Before my hand reached for it, I reversed that car nearly a quarter mile down, a dark road I could barely see, using only my reverse lights, my neck craned back, my hands shaking against the wheel. I found a gravel driveway, swung around, and drove back to the highway without once looking in the rearview mirror because I was genuinely afraid of what I might see following us in the dark. We drove the rest of the way home without speaking. I kept both hands on the wheel and my eyes on the road, and Daniel sat with his knees pulled up and his hood pulled down over his face, and neither of us said a word for 40 straight minutes. He asked me once, a few days later, what I thought the man wanted. I told him I didn't know. He nodded slowly and didn't push it, because he's always trusted my answers, even when he probably shouldn't. I've never told him what I actually think. I think the truck was placed there deliberately, on a road chosen because it was isolated, and because GPS systems route people onto it when the highway backs up. I think the rope in the bed was not incidental. I think the man's single step to the side was a decision. That something about the two of us, or the way I walked back, or something he calculated in those few seconds, made him let us go. I will never know what that something was. Daniel is 23 now. He still rides with me on long trips sometimes, still falls asleep against the window the same way he always has. I let him sleep. I drive the main roads. I have the extra hour without complaint. I have not taken a GPS detour onto an unlit road after dark since that night, and I never will again. There are shortcuts that cost you nothing, and there are shortcuts that show you exactly how close the edge is. I got to drive away from mine. I think about that every single time I pass a back road turnoff in the dark and keep going straight. I've started telling this story twice before and stopped both times. Not because I'm afraid of how it sounds, but because every time I try to put it into words, I end up back in that parking lot, standing under those lights holding that notebook, and the feeling that comes with it is not something I'm able to shake quickly once I let it in. But I think it needs to exist somewhere outside my own head. So here it is. Fully, for the first time. I was 31, driving solo from Phoenix to Albuquerque on I-10 eastbound, a route I'd done for work maybe 15 times over 3 years. It was a Wednesday night in early November. I left Phoenix at 8 in the evening with a full tank, a thermos of coffee, and nothing unusual on my mind. The drive was 7 hours on a good night. I planned to check into my hotel around 3, sleep until 7, and be at a client meeting by 9. Routine in every sense of the word. The first 3 hours were exactly that. Empty interstate, good road conditions, a podcast playing low through the speakers. I stopped once for gas around the 2-hour mark at a well-lit station with other vehicles around. Nothing felt off, nothing felt off the beginning of anything. I pulled into the rest stop at mile marker 2818 around 11:30. It was a standard interstate facility, concrete pavilion, 2 vending machines, a men's and women's restroom block, a small dog walk area fenced off with low wooden posts. The parking lot had maybe 6 vehicles in it, 2 semis idling on the far end, a minivan parked near the middle with its interior light on, a couple of smaller cars toward the front. Ordinary, the kind of rest stop you pass through without remembering it. I parked, used the restroom, fed a few dollars into the vending machine for a coffee, and walked back toward my car. The night air was cold and dry, the kind of desert cold that feels clean. I remember thinking I was making good time. I remember feeling completely fine. Then I saw it, a notebook on the hood of my car, small spiral-bound black cover with no markings on the outside, sitting perfectly centered on the hood, flat and still, like someone had placed it there with both hands and made sure it was even. I stopped walking. I looked around the parking lot carefully. There was no one near my vehicle. The minivan's interior light was off now. I hadn't heard a door, hadn't heard an engine, but the light was off. The semis hadn't moved. The other cars looked empty and still. The parking lot was quiet enough that I could hear the vending machine humming from 20 feet away. I stood there for a moment. Then I picked up the notebook and opened it. The first several pages were a travelogue, dates written in the top corner of each entry, followed by a highway number, a direction, and a time. I-10 eastbound, 11:15 p.m. I-40 westbound, 12:40 a.m. Route 89 northbound, 10:50 p.m. The entries went back months, page after page of them, the handwriting small and consistent and cramped, like someone writing quickly but carefully in low light. Each entry was short, just the road, the direction, the time, nothing more than that for the first third of the notebook. Then the entries changed. Same handwriting, same format, but descriptions added after the time. Short ones, clinical almost. Silver sedan, female driver, alone. White pickup truck, 2 male occupants eastbound. Blue hatchback, female driver, 1 child visible in rear seat. Red SUV, male driver, passenger asleep. I read 3 or 4 of those before I understood what I was reading. And then I stopped turning pages and looked down at the one I was holding. Gray sedan, female driver, alone, eastbound. The date at the top of the entry was that night. The time written next to it was 11:40. I checked my phone. 11:43. I want to give you the full weight of that moment, because I think it's the center of everything. That entry had been written before I arrived. Whoever had written it had known my car, known I was alone, known my direction of travel, and had written it down in a notebook before placing it on my hood sometime in the 8 minutes I had been inside that rest stop, which meant they had been watching the parking lot before I pulled in. They had identified my car and my situation from a distance, written it into their log, and then walked across that lot and set the notebook down on my hood while I was standing 30 feet away at a vending machine, and I had not seen them, not once. I closed the notebook. I set it on the ground beside my front tire without really deciding to do that. My hands just did it, like they wanted it off me. I got in my car, locked every door, started the engine, and left without looking at any other vehicle in that lot. I drove 15 miles before my hands stopped trembling enough to hold the wheel at a normal grip. Then I called the highway patrol non-emergency line. I told the officer everything, the rest stop location, the time, the notebook, the entry describing my car, the date and time written before I had arrived. He listened carefully, asked good questions, took down my contact information and the full description of the notebook. He told me someone would follow up. No one called. I followed up twice over the next 2 weeks. The first time I was told the report had been logged and was under review. The second time the officer who answered had no record of my original call in the system at all. I've considered every rational explanation for that notebook. A writer documenting highway traffic patterns, a researcher, someone tracking their own drives obsessively, someone with a benign reason I simply can't see from where I'm standing. I've tried every version of innocent. None of them account for the fact that the entry was written before I arrived. None of them explain why someone felt the need to place it on my car rather than keep it in their pocket. What I keep coming back to is the selection. Silver sedan, female alone. Blue hatchback, female with child. Gray sedan, female alone. The descriptions weren't random. They weren't logging everyone. They were logging specific types of travelers, specific combinations of vulnerability, if I'm being honest about the pattern I saw. I don't stop at highway rest stops after dark anymore. When I need to pull over on a night drive, I find a gas station with lights and staff and other people and cameras I can see clearly. I park in view of the building. I keep my stops under 5 minutes. I check my car before I get in, not just a glance, a real check, mirrors and hood and back seat. These are small things. They cost me almost nothing. But I made them into rules, because the alternative is standing in a parking lot at midnight, realizing that someone has been watching you for long enough to write you down, and you had no idea. The meeting in Albuquerque went fine. I drove back to Phoenix 4 days later, in daylight, taking my time. I've never made that run at night again, and I won't. I've thought about who else stopped at that rest stop that night. The minivan with the interior light on, the other small cars parked toward the front. Whether any of them noticed anything, whether any of them picked up a notebook, whether any of them are sitting somewhere right now, trying to make rational sense of the same thing I am. I think there were more entries in that notebook than the pages I read. I think the log went back further than a few months. I think whoever was keeping it had been doing this for a long time, on many roads, in many states, and that I was not the first person to walk back to their car and find something waiting for them. I think I was just one of the ones who drove away.